Your fantasy playoffs are quickly approaching, so in this video, we're going to be talking about the 7 players you need to be stashing to help you win your league. These are guys who are available on the far majority of waiver wires right now, and it just takes one injury for them to become potential league winners. And we'll start with perhaps the best stash or handcuff, whatever you want to call it, in all of fantasy football, and that's Corum, who is coming off of the best usage in a game this season. Because in week 14 for the Rams, according to Fantasy Life, you can see right here, 33% of the snaps for Corum. That was a season high for him in a game this year, and also 28% of the rush attempts was also a season high. Now, this might not sound like anything crazy for you, but this is encouraging for a rookie trending towards the fantasy postseason. None of your friends or league mates will notice that Corum went out there and had 8 carries, which tied a season high, but actually got these carries in a usable game compared to like week 2 when he got them in garbage time for 42 yards in this one. So he averaged 6 yards per touch, was efficient in this one, just like he was for basically his entire college career for the past 3 seasons at Michigan. Where he was arguably the best running back over this 3-year stretch, you can see in 2022 was his big breakout year. He had over 1,400 yards. He was expected to go into the NFL draft, potentially be the #1 running back in that draft, but he ended up having a knee injury late in the season in 2022, came back for 2023 just to win a national championship and put the team on his back during that stretch at Michigan. Now, for many of these reasons that I just mentioned, his past production in college, he was a fantasy sleeper in the summer, but also because of his landing spot, going in the 3rd round and landing with Sean McVay and the Rams, but also because Kyren Williams is there, and Kyren Williams has already suffered 3 different foot/ankle injuries in his short 3-year NFL career. So a lot of people were excited about Corum, and now we're finally starting to see him get more usage and be efficient just like he was in college. And it was a small sample, but we got to see that early on the 2nd and 3rd drive of the game. It's Corum out there having 8 carries for 42 yards. Of course, this is still Kyren Williams' backfield, but the whole point of this video is to get guys who are stashes. You don't need to be rostering Nick Westbrook-Ikhine and these other guys who are never going to hit your starting lineup. Roster the high-end running backs, 1 injury away guys that can win you your league if Kyren Williams was to go down. And the other reason why this is important is because look at this right here. These are the 3 running backs on the active roster each week for the Rams. Ronnie Rivers is the other guy. But over these last 9 games, no other guy other than Kyren Williams and Corum has seen a single snap. So Ronnie Rivers, not only has he not seen a carry or a target, he has not even seen a single snap in the game. If Kyren goes down, it's all Corum. And it's a beneficial schedule if that was to happen. This upcoming week at home against the Bills, a bottom 10 run defense, but then entering the fantasy postseason, the 49ers, who basically their entire line, all their linebackers are hurt and banged up. The Jets, who have become a little bit better, especially after coming out of the bye week as of late, but still not a stud defense like they were last year in the beginning of this year. And then in the fantasy championship, you get the Cardinals, who are a borderline bottom 5 to bottom 10 defensive line. So be sure to stash Corum right now. I would probably rank him as like the 1A, 1B. We'll get into that other guy who's right up there as the top 2 stashes in all fantasy. But before we get into that other player, I got to let you know about Kimani Vidal. You've probably heard the name by now, but just in case you haven't, because he's available in over 80% of fantasy leagues, he's trending in the right direction right now as the fantasy postseason gets closer. Because J.K. Dobbins, the Chargers veteran running back who's been their workhorse basically all season long, he was placed on injured reserve this past week with an MCL sprain, so it's a knee injury for him, which basically means he's out the next 4 weeks. J.K. Dobbins cannot come back until week 17, the fantasy postseason or the fantasy championship, and it's not even guaranteed if he comes back then or if he's at full strength. So this has opened the door for the rookie Kimani Vidal, the late round rookie out of Troy, and he saw his best usage in week 13 without J.K. Dobbins. In this game, he goes out there, he sees 27% of the snaps, he sees 24% of the rush attempts. Both of these were season highs, and again, your fantasy league mates and your friends are not going to notice that Kimani Vidal's role slowly increased, and these are the trends that you have to pay attention to because usually they indicate potential blowout coming. 4 carries for 20 yards. Like, you're not going to sit here and be like, oh, Kimani Vidal, 4 carries for 20 yards, go spend all my fab budget on him. No, you could probably get him for free right now. It's worth noting that, again, he only had 4 carries in this game. For the most part, there wasn't a lot of plays run by the Chargers, especially in the second half. Like, Justin Herbert only dropped back to throw 8 times in this game. Like, when Kirk Cousins is throwing interceptions, when they're working on short fields, when Ladd McConkey is having a big first half, like, the Chargers offense just really didn't have the ball. So it was only 4 rush attempts, but Gus Edwards led the way with 6 rush attempts. So here's the best run of the game for any of the running backs. It's Kimani Vidal, the rookie, in the backfield here. It's basically a delayed handoff. He runs off tackle to the left. You'll see it, and he ends up going for an explosive play, which is kind of the name of the game for this guy. He sees a nice hole, he hits the hole, and he goes for a 15-plus yard gain. The best run that we've seen from anybody this year. And that's kind of what Kimani Vidal is. He's this rare combination of size, speed, and also power, and he has a lot more explosiveness than Gus Edwards. And here is that combination. He's 213 pounds. That's good size. You could be a red zone back with that type of size. And then his overall speed, he has 88th percentile speed according to Player Profiler. That's good to see. And then you go over to his college production. If we pull it up here on Player Profiler, last year at Troy, he rushes for over 1,600 yards, led all of college football with over 1,600 yards. He adds in 200 receiving yards, so you get nearly 1,900 yards for the guy. Yes, it's at a smaller program in Troy, but he's showing you that he has all the athletic testing abilities. He has the ability to catch passes, produce on the ground, and he also has the key trait, the cheat code to get on the field as a rookie, pass protection. protection. Because this guy, the coach Jim Harbaugh, he is not going to put a rookie, especially if you've been paying attention to the NFL the past 1 to 2 months, how much Jim Harbaugh loves Justin Herbert, like audibly just screaming out how much he loves Justin Herbert, how pretty of a ball he throws, how great he is. All of these things, he's literally saying how he's a tank, he's amazing. He's saying these quotes, so he loves Justin Herbert. In general, he's not going to put a running back out there that can't pass protect for his quarterback. He's definitely not going to risk getting Justin Herbert hurt. So Vidal being able to pass protect should get him on the field more, and that's going to be important as recent or as current as this upcoming week against the Chiefs. Well, they'll probably be underdogs. They're probably going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. Vidal should be on the field in those situations ahead of Edwards, and if he can produce in this, if he can pass protect well against the Chiefs defensive line, that's good. If he can take some check down passes, maybe an explosive run or two, he can actually see a larger role moving into the fantasy postseason where he has a nice matchup against the Chargers and the Patriots in the fantasy championship if Dobbins isn't ready or fully healthy by then. So Kimani Vidal is somebody who's worth a stash right now because he's already seeing a slowly larger role in a good offense. Now, before we can get into the running back that I believe is right up there with Blake Corum as the best stash in all of fantasy, and he's available in over 60% of leagues right now, I got to tell you about something exciting, and that's our fantasy blueprint sponsor, Vivid Picks. Because if you love fantasy sports or just enjoy making predictions like I do, then this app is for you. Vivid Picks makes it extremely easy to get in on the action each week. All you do is pick players, make your predictions, and then watch the games unfold. It is that simple. Now, they do have a couple of game modes. They have the versus game mode, which I'm getting a little bit more involved with, but I like the more or less. I play that every single week on there, almost every single day. It is my favorite, and I think you would enjoy it as well. Because honestly, it's just so straightforward and easy. Here's a play that I have for Thursday Night Football. If you're watching this after Thursday Night Football, they'll have a whole slate of options up for the Sunday games, for all other sports as well, if you're into basketball and some other sports. But I have Sam Laporta to score a touchdown coming off of a 2-touchdown game, getting more involved in the offense against some slower and weaker Packers linebackers, and Jaylen Reed also coming off of a game where he scored multiple touchdowns on Thanksgiving. I expect him to play from behind on the road against Detroit. Jaylen Reed, the top receiver, needs to be a priority in the red zone. I take both of those guys to score a touchdown here. You could put $20 on that to win nearly $100. That's what I'm personally doing, and you could tail it as well. And here's the exciting part. If you're new to Vivid Picks, if you use the promo code SAL when you sign up and deposit, they'll match your first deposit up to $250. So if you put in $25, you get $25 right back. You put in $250, you get $250 right back. So if you're ready to take advantage of that deposit bonus and start making some predictions today, download Vivid Picks now and use the code SAL to start dominating. So a big thank you to Vivid Picks for sponsoring the Fantasy Blueprint in this video. Now let's get back into it. And we'll get back into it with that running back who I think is right up there at 1A, 1B as the best stashes in fantasy right now, and that is Zach Charbonnet of the Seattle Seahawks. This is a proven running back. He's a proven 3-down running back who would take on a league-winning role if Kenneth Walker was to go down. And look, we already saw this earlier this season when in week 1 at the end of the game, Kenneth Walker suffered a abdominal injury, a sports hernia injury, and he had to miss weeks 2 and 3. And I don't know if you recall, but one of the best roles in all of fantasy football was Zach Charbonnet without Kenneth Walker in weeks 2 and 3. He played 95% and 85% of the snaps. He saw 78% of the backfield carries both weeks. This ended up leading to Charbonnet during that 2-week stretch seeing 20.5 opportunities per game, top 5 in the NFL during that time. And during those games, he ended up finishing both times as a top 10 running back. According to the game logs on Player Profiler, you can see right here, he was the running back 8 overall, top 10 finish. And in week 3, he was the running back 7 overall, and he puts up even more fantasy points. 25 fantasy points, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards. He was absolutely cooking during this time. They relied on him in all situations. And this is a true 3-down back, like I mentioned earlier. During his time at UCLA, he was involved in the red zone, the goal line, and also as a pass catcher. He's a borderline elite pass catcher. Because Charbonnet has at least 2 receptions in 9 out of 12 games this year, and keep in mind, the majority of those, the far majority, are with Walker active. And in the 2 games without Walker, Charbonnet went out there and earned a 12% target share each week. Anything above like an 8%, 7% or so for a running back is good. Above 10% is great. 12% is like, a borderline top 5 to top 10 usage in the passing game. And in these 2 games combined, he had a total of 8 catches, 4 catches per game. That's well above average. But Charbonnet is not only a great stash because of his obvious league-winning upside that we saw earlier this year if Walker was to go down with an injury or miss a week or 2 of the rest of the year, but also because he has standalone value. And we saw this standalone value this past week. This is with Walker active. He's still getting you 12 fantasy points. He's turning 6 touches into over 40 total yards, averaging 7 yards per touch, finding the end zone. He's now scored at least 11 fantasy points this season in 4 different games with Kenneth Walker active. So 4 different times he's been a flex option or RB2 option for you. That's with Walker active. So he's useful either way, even if Walker is not out. And then you start to look at his rest of season schedule. The matchup this week on the road against the Cardinals is like a top 10 matchup. And if they end up trailing in that one, Walker could see some more usage. Matchup against some weaker Packers linebackers at home. Tough matchup against the Vikings. That's the one that we can't get around. That's a tough spot. But then the Bears, a bottom 10 run defense. So if something was to happen to Walker, either way, this upcoming week against the Cardinals with a lot of teams on bye, he's a nice flex option. I think Charbonnet is right up there with Blake Corum if their starting running back was to go down as like the best league winning options in all of fantasy right now. With the caveat of best league winning options that are actually available. Obviously, if like Jahmyr Gibbs Gibbs went down, Montgomery would be a great option, but he's not available on any waiver wires. The next guy we got to talk about is a rookie, and it's Ray Davis of the Buffalo Bills, who's worth a stash as the fantasy postseason gets closer because, look, I mean, just in week 13, this past Sunday night against the 49ers in the snow game alone, we saw great usage. A 32% target share was a season high in a game with James Cook active this year. So was his 30% of the backfield carries. And this led to yet again another nice game and a very efficient game for Ray Davis. He puts up nearly 14 fantasy points. He finds the end zone. He got some blowout run here, but he was involved, you know, throughout the first 3 quarters, involved while also Josh Allen was on the field. So 12 total touches, 67 yards. He's averaging over 5 yards per touch once again. And Davis is similar to Charbonnet in that if the starter in this scenario, James Cook, was to go down, Ray Davis becomes a potential league winner, but he also has standalone value. And now we actually have seen a sample like Charbonnet of earlier this year when Ray Davis got to start for the team. In week 6, James Cook was kind of like a late inactive in a Sunday night game. It was a Monday night game in week 6 against the Jets. And in that game, here's what Ray Davis did. He made his first start in his 6th ever game in the NFL. They trusted him for 20 carries, by the way. This is something about Ray Davis. Coaches trust him all the way back into multiple stops in college. 97 yards. Not only does he lead the team in rushing, he leads the team in receiving. 3 receptions, 55 yards. He worked downfield for a big 42-yard catch in that game as well. And he totaled over 150 yards in this game. On the week, he was a top 5 running back, putting up 18.2 fantasy points without even scoring a touchdown, having a very impressive 23 touchdowns during that time, a tough matchup against the Jets before they lost their coach, before they ended up losing some key defensive pieces that got banged up by injury. So overall, a really nice performance showing you that he does have a ton of upside in a good offense if James Cook was to miss time. And since that performance in week 6, Davis has played in 6 more games with James Cook active in all of them, and he's seen at least 11 fantasy points in 50% of those games. Now, if you need a quick background on Davis, he's nice size, 211 pounds. He has the ability to be a red zone back. This guy's trusted. He has above average speed as well, 70th percentile speed. And I mentioned that he's trusted. Like, he's been trusted no matter where he goes. As a red zone back in all key situations, as a pass protector, coaches love this guy. Let's look at his final year where he really broke out. I mean, he had back-to-back 1,000-yard years, but his final year at Kentucky, he has 1,000 yards overall. He puts up 300 receiving yards on 29 catches, so nearly 1,400 total yards, 29 catches, and despite having 215 touches, the dude only had 1 total fumble and averaged over 6 yards per touch. And this strong efficiency has continued into the NFL, where he's currently averaging 5.4 yards per touch. Number 8 amongst all running backs in the league. He continues to go out there and be somebody who is very much so worthwhile in terms of being a stash. Also has in deeper leagues, 12 to 14 man leagues, especially with the bye weeks here, has that flex upside as well. Speaking of rookies and somewhat middle round rookies, Ray Davis a 4th rounder, let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals 3rd round rookie Trey Benson, who I believe is also worth stashing right now. Now look, Benson has operated for the most part of the season, including in week 13 as the RB2 on this team if you're looking at snaps. James Conner we know is the starter, but Amari DiMercato has surprisingly been like number 2 on the team in snaps overall, but that's because he operates in key situations. DiMercato is on the field in clear passing downs, those long down and distances, and the 2-minute offense. That gets him on the field more, but Benson appears to be the direct replacement if James Conner was to miss time. And Benson is the guy that they invested a 3rd round pick in. He has very impressive size plus speed. At 216 pounds, he ran a 4.39 40 time at the NFL Combine. That's 98th percentile according to Player Profiler, which means top 2% speed ever to attend the Combine at his size. And not only does he have the rare size plus speed combination, he also has an even more rare trait, putting those all together with power. Because in his first year at Florida State, he set the college football broken tackle record that was previously held by guys like Kenneth Walker and David Montgomery. And this broken tackle success, albeit on a limited sample in the NFL, it's continued. A 24% juke rate is well above average. It's ahead of guys like Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Brian Robinson so far this season. Now, as mentioned earlier, Benson is clearly behind James Conner, who James Conner, congrats to him, even though he's approaching nearly 30, he just got a 2-year contract extension. But the fact is that James Conner is approaching 30. He's 29 years old right now, close to 30, and this is a guy who's missed on average 4 games per season in his career. So we hope nothing happens, knock on wood, to James Conner. And what makes things a little bit more enticing is this Cardinals playoff schedule. It might be the best playoff schedule for a running back. You get the Patriots, a bottom 10 overall run defense according to PFF, the Panthers, who allow the most rushing yards and most rushing touchdowns this season, and then the Rams, who as of right now are a bottom 10 run defense in tackling, and they already this season, earlier this year in week 2, allowed 120 plus yards to Conner and the Cardinals. Another rookie running back that I believe a 4th rounder for the Miami Dolphins is worth a stash is indeed Jaylen Wright, because look, we've already seen this guy be involved in the offense this year. As of right now, it seems like he is the RB3 on this team. Raheem Mostert has appeared to take back the RB2 job these past couple of weeks, but of course that can flip back and forth, but that's not really the thing here. We more so care if something was to happen to 1, Devon Achane, or 2, Raheem Mostert, who is older. Both these guys have dealt with injuries not only this year, but in past seasons. If just one of those guys was to miss time, well, now you have the rookie Jaylen Wright seeing a larger workload, especially if it was Devon Achane. And we saw that earlier this year when Achane went out with a concussion and missed most of the game in week 5 against the Patriots, Wright came on and he took 13 carries for 86 yards. He averaged nearly 7 yards per touch in this game. He had a couple of explosive runs. He looked really good. And look, if you're not familiar with Jaylen Wright, here's a quick rundown. This is a guy who was productive right away as an 18-year-old in college. He put 85 carries for 409 yards. He was averaging well over 5 yards, 6 yards per carry. In his college career, the dude was averaging basically like 7 yards per touch. He never had a big workload. He was always splitting backfields, which kind of helps him in terms of not a lot of tread on the tires right now. You can see right here, over 1,000 rushing yards for him on just 137 rush attempts. The dude was literally averaging over 7 yards per carry his final year of college. And this guy was extremely explosive. He led college football in runs of 10 plus yards last year. Over 26% of his carries went for at least 10 yards. And he landed in the perfect spot. He has nice size. He has 4.38 speed. So he just fits this offense really well. An offense that is trending in the right direction. They're getting healthier on offense with Tua. They're moving the ball. They're getting to the red zone. If something was to happen to Achane, Jaylen Wright could be a sneaky league winner. I like the other guys we've already talked about in this video more because there's multiple running backs in the Miami backfield, and Achane clearly has the stronghold on that backfield. He's only giving it up if he gets hurt, but matchups against the Texans and the 49ers are appealing in the fantasy playoffs. If Achane was to miss a game or potentially the rest of the season, Jaylen Wright becomes a nice stash. So these have been the players and really the running backs you should be stashing as the fantasy playoffs approach next week. We're literally 1 week away from them. There's a lot of teams on bye this week, so people are going to drop some of these stash running backs. Make sure to secure them. And if you want to see the other players across the other positions, even tight end and quarterback, some guys who could be streamer options or just players rest of the season for you to get on your team, well, check out the waiver wire video that dropped on Monday. I appreciate you all a ton. We'll have more content the rest of the week. Best of luck. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.